Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crush That Exam. My name is Dr. Erica Liggins, licensed clinical psychologist and founder and CEO of the Crush That Exam program. I'm so excited to share with you yet another story of someone who has overcome the EPPP. So let's get into their story. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. My name is Leticia Costa, and um, English is my third language. And I also had a lot of anxiety leading up to this exam. So I think that those were the big intersections that were anxiety inducing for me, the English not being my first language. I think understanding that people of color also had like a lower pass rate. And I'm originally from Brazil, so my first language is Portuguese, my second language is Spanish. And despite feeling like I have a good grasp on English, we know that this exam has a whole different level. Um, so let me think. So in terms of other important aspects about me and that maybe influenced how I approached or my feelings going into this exam, um, I think I just have a history of avoiding and standardized exams as well. So
Mhm.
for undergraduate, I ended up um, going to community college and getting all A's, and then finding my way into a four-year university that way. Um, my program as well my doctoral program did not require the GRE. And so this was the one exam that I could not find a back entrance or a back door to avoid it in some capacity. And so I was faced with, I couldn't run anymore. And that's when I finally found someone who could support me in getting through that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Not growing up in the US, English being not your second, but your third language, which is something that's really scary for a lot of people, being bilingual or in your case, trilingual, and having to do standardized tests in their non-native language is not easy. Can you tell us when did you graduate and where did you go?
Sure. So I went to Alliant University in San Francisco, and I graduated in 2023. And then I had a very difficult fellowship, so I didn't really even get to studying during my fellowship. I think I was maybe introduced to you at the end of my fellowship, if I remember correctly, but it took me a little while to even be able to focus and get going on this exam.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be really difficult to balance it all. I mean, the training and studying, and at the end of a very long and difficult process. And so tell me, I guess I can't remember, who recommended you to me?
Natalia.
Oh, that's right. So someone who I've been coaching sent you
Yes.
my way. And what was your experience with studying prior? It sounds like, from what I remember, you hadn't even really started or just kind of looked
I
into
hadn't
it.
started, not too much. You totally, your memory is impeccable because you see so many of us. Um, but yeah, I had basically like started looking at the materials. I bought the platform. I sort of just started dabbling, but I was feeling a bit overwhelmed even how to start. Um, I had heard of someone who was a like a this was when I was still doing my fellowship, and this particular person was not quite, he did like tutoring, and I realized in working with you is I didn't really have a tutoring problem. I had a coaching problem. I think it really wasn't about someone to tutor me to the material. And so I remember attending a few sessions from this one guy who was a tutor um, while I was in my fellowship, but very disjointed without having, without really starting properly. So really, that's all I had done. I bought the platform and I attended a few sessions.
Gotcha. So I got you pretty brand new, which is great. Got to really shape your whole experience, which is really fun for me as a coach because oftentimes I'm working with people who unfortunately have had multiple failed attempts. And they feel pretty beaten up by this whole experience. And many of them will say, if I had only had you from the beginning, I just wonder how different things would have gone. And so it was such a pleasure to be able to get you from the beginning and to support you. And so someone told you about my services. What made you decide to go ahead and give it a try?
I think for me, I knew that I had heard of other people failing multiple times. And so I thought, why do I have to fail to learn from that experience? So I think that that was one of the feelings that I had in wanting to, when someone referred me, in realizing like, why don't I invest in that support now so I do things right from the beginning and hopefully don't have to go through the pain and the expense that it is to take it multiple times.
Mhm.
I mean, but honestly, really, I felt really comfortable with you. We had that first introductory session that really, where you introduced the process. And what really spoke to me was I think for me really I felt seen by working with another person of color, a person who understood my struggles from a perspective of being a person of color. I as well have not officially diagnosed, but very much suspected ADHD, and I have a lot of test anxiety, and all of those things were things we discussed as well as my history of avoiding standardized exams. And I thought, there were just so many factors that for me felt very natural to just go into it with a bit of support. So hopefully I would succeed the first try.
And that you did.
I did.
Oh, it's so amazing. Oh my God. Oh, what a journey we went on together. This feels so good to be here with you right now. So, so good. Oh my gosh. So, tell us, once you got into the program, so you felt comfortable right at the start, because so many of the things you were dealing with were things that I dealt with. And so that helps to know that your coach understands, like on a very personal level, uh,
100.
what you're going through. And so once you got into the program, we know the program is not a shortcuts or quick, easy thing. I really teach people to be over prepared for the exam. So, what were the top three things that you think were most helpful for you in the program?
I think for me, the structure was very helpful because again, I just felt overwhelmed by how to even begin the sheer amount of information that we are tasked with learning feels just overwhelming. So I think for me, just having the top, I think, was just having the structure. I also had, I realized that the structure was important, but also I needed, and I don't think I fully understood at the time, but I think I really needed support in overcoming my self-defeating beliefs around being a bad test taker. And I remember focusing a lot in the beginning and feeling worried about, well, are we not going to discuss enough, like a lot of strategies for how to approach it? And, as we went on, I understood that your method works because it's not about strategizing, it's about knowing the content. So I mean, you don't have to strategize that much if you know it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, people
So,
spend a lot of time trying to find out the secret sauce that will
yes,
unlock and it's just
yes.
really not, there's really no secret.
Totally. And, I think, we did discuss a little bit of that too, like
Of
approaches
course.
on how to, how to approach a question. So that was something we discussed. But to your point, it wasn't about a secret sauce. It was about not, I think one of the things we discovered for me is that sometimes I would overthink things. And so again, it was more about my challenges, less about secret sauces. It was more like, okay, what am I getting caught up in, and trying to fine tune those challenges I was having.
Yeah.
But thinking that gave you two. My last thing, because the structure helping me with the self-defeating beliefs, and the last thing that was helpful was your warmth and your support. Was just really, really, I mean, the fact that you do this work, you understand what that was like for me, and just feeling seen. That just really, it's a very isolating process, and that helped me feel less isolated. I knew there was also a community, and attending some of those success stories, little sessions you did, that was also really helpful as part of your
Mhm.
program.
Yeah, the monthly EPPP Sip and Chat events have been honestly a game changer for a lot of people because when you're looking at someone and they're talking about all their challenges, right? Because like sometimes when you see on social media someone passed, it's like, but how did they do it? And like, what did they have to go through to get there, you know? And it sometimes it's not always helpful, but when you can go actually listen to that person and hear them and ask them questions, it just really helps things become more clear. And it's those monthly events are just restoring hope for people left and right. And it's really cool to watch people be uplifted from just hearing other people's stories. So thank you for sharing that. So how long did we work together? Tell the people.
Let me remember. If I
I know.
mean,
Even I'm like,
so
huh,
we
when did we start?
started. I'm trying to remember. So I remember we start. I want to say, was it like 5 months, maybe 6 months? I can't remember exactly
Hmm.
because that time was just, there was so much going on. So
Yeah.
basically, the reason why I feel a bit conflicted in remembering the time, it was because we started, and then I had, unexpected situation happened. My mom had some health issues, and I had to go outside the country to be with her. And we slowed things down. And I was away for 2 months. So that
Yeah.
really slowed us down. And we were in contact a little bit and trying to figure out whether I could do a little bit along the way. And you were so supportive in also helping me give myself the space to take care of what I needed to take care of, because my overachieving side was really fighting me and
Mhm.
trying to do too much. And I remember that really was another piece. But I think like in active studying, it was a little bit less than that. So maybe it was about
Yeah.
5 months, I want to
Of
say.
like of active studying, but then
Yes.
I'm struggling too. I should have looked this up before we
I know.
but because I
Sorry that
feel like we
I
definitely started beginning of this year, right? If not early or late
yeah.
last year, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we started, and then we discussed a little bit of like whether I was ready. And then I feel like we didn't start immediately also. Then I did your program, the online version of your program. And then and I feel like I was maybe still wrapping some things up. And so I think
Yeah.
it was kind of a slow progression and really getting going. And then the other piece I recall is when I started doing the note-taking process.
Hmm.
That was a very difficult part for me
Yeah.
because is when you come into full contact with how vast the level of information is.
Huge. Lot.
And yes, and then I think just I struggled making my notes concise. I felt like it was difficult to know what to not. I kept trying to shorten it and how to decide what to shorten and how to shorten but not lose any of the content. So there was a lot of just emotional turmoil during the
Yeah.
note writing portion of the process. So I feel like that I do recall that part just taking a few months, which I didn't foresee, but I feel like I sort of what I needed. I just needed to just go through that process. And I see too the importance of writing my own notes versus studying from someone else's, because my language, the way that I reviewed it was helpful when I started to review the content.
Absolutely. What a journey this was. And, I just want to normalize for people like that oftentimes this process can take longer than people expect. Because a lot of times it's understandable. People are tired. They want to be done. They just want to come in and do it. But the thing that I just drive home so much with my coaching clients is I want you to go in there, and if it's your first time, I want it to be your first and your last. And if you're someone who's already had, a few attempts, I want the next time to be the last time. And so we have to do it in a very diligent way. But through that process, we find a new sense of self. And I think watching you literally transform through this process because you got hit with many different challenges that were out of your control, and we had to make adjustments. And I know at times you felt just like, oh, when am I ever going to be done? When is this ever going to be done? And so looking back on it, what was there anything you wish you would have done differently, or what was the hardest thing you had to overcome?
Good question. I do wish I'd move a little bit more swiftly through the notes because I think I was trying to learn it a little bit as I was writing it. And I think that your method allows for so much repetition that I didn't need to. I guess I wanted to make sure I understood everything that I was writing first.
Mhm.
And sometimes I was then like looking up more things to add so that I could, make these notes so perfect. And what I realize is as you're going through the process of reviewing, you start to get layers of understanding, and then you can start writing additional notes for yourself to make it make sense. So I think that that is something I would have done differently. Um, what else? I also wish I had I think there was a period too where my anxiety started to get really intense, and I had a lot of discomfort with the idea of even considering medication. I had never taken any kind of medication before, and I felt like I wish I had opened up to that idea sooner. Uh,
Mhm.
Perhaps because I think that it took me a long time to even, I think it worked out really well in the end,
Yeah.
but I just taking a beta blocker. It was such a, you know, not a big deal, but it made a big difference. And whether it made a huge difference by itself or whether it was the fact that I knew I was doing something, whether there was a placebo aspect or whether it was the medicine in itself, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, I feel like it became part of the ritual. And I took it when I took my practice exams, and then I took it on the exam itself. So I think just letting go of these beliefs that were holding me back, if I would just let those go sooner and move through things with discomfort sooner as well. I think that there were times where I felt a bit attached to it being a certain way, and then I think that that's what led to a little bit more time sometimes too.
Mhm. This is truly such a journey of like learning how to trust the process. And we say that all the time to like clients but like, and then it's hard to do it though when you're in it and you're like, ah. And then finding like, what's the word? Like just finding flexibility and openness to do things in new ways and letting go of stigma and things like that and being okay with, yeah, maybe I need accommodations, maybe I need medication, maybe I need these different things, and it's okay. And
Yes,
I've just seen it be a game changer for so many people. And I think it definitely helped you. And I think it allowed all of that really hard work that you put in to shine. And you ultimately crushed this exam with no issues at all as a non-native English speaker who was not born in the US and who has suspected ADHD and test anxiety. And you did just fine because you took the time to prepare and you set yourself up with all of the support you needed. And I
absolutely.
think your story is such a testament to that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I felt like you just held my hand through the process, which really helped me even be open to it. Something else I didn't mention and that you said was the accommodation aspect too, which I always had. I never really had accommodations through anything in my life before. And I knew that one of the things I was struggling with is reading things quickly enough. And that was
Mhm.
only contributing to so much anxiety. So getting the accommodations was a huge game changer because it just took out that aspect completely. And I thought it was going to be a much more complicated process. So I think I wasted a bit of time to imagining that it was going to be so hard and really realizing once I got it, it was not that big of a thing.
Yeah.
And it made a huge, huge difference because I could just focus on studying and just doing my best versus the time as much.
Oh, I think it all worked in your favor. Oh, it's so amazing. And I think, as a person of color who's had to overcome so much, you probably just got really used to always pushing through and figuring it out and overcompensating. And I remember telling you, we just don't have to do that this time. Like,
You don't
let's
have to
give you what
suffer.
you need.
You don't have,
We don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer.
and it's so true. I think growing up, um, as the child of immigrant parents, you just learn to push through. You like it's hard. Okay, put more hours in. It's hard. Work harder. But the idea of support it is not really part of the just part of the building blocks. I think there was support from having like a loving family, but it wasn't support from one of those, accommodations or additional time. Like those, I remember getting the accommodations and getting emotional. Do you remember this of just being like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be given like a little tiny break. And again, it's not like that gave me some sort of an advantage. It was just a simple thing that just made it so that I could just read things a little bit slower without worrying about it. And like that alone was such a game changer. It really was. So I'm so grateful to you and your process and your support because so many of those things were things my own internalized ableism and my own, perfectionistic tendencies, all of those pieces. And I do believe that this process helped to change me for the better. It wasn't just a process to get me through the test, but I really do feel like I had to lean into my self-care differently. I had to lean in, because it is a marathon. It isn't, a sprint. And yeah, so I feel different from having gone through this process. And I thank you so much for everything that you did.
You are so welcome. Like I'm having flashbacks as we're talking, just seeing the changes. I mean, I could feel it through Zoom. Like I could feel your energy shifting and wow, I just remember that one day being like, "Are
It
you
was
okay? Like something's different." And you were like, "Yeah, I'm just
I was so calm. I was
yeah,
started to
you were
feel
so
so calm. You're like, what? And the thing is, I remember my partner like lost his job, and it was like
life
suddenly
was
there was
crazy for
an
you."
additional money aspect, and so there was all, and I was just calm somehow, and it was because I had been practicing, for so long. We had been going for a while, and I thought, okay, this is another thing in the way, but we're not gonna let it derail me. And it was just even calm. And I remember you saying that you're like, wait, whatever is happening, just lean into that.
Like keep doing whatever you're doing, keep doing that. Truly miraculous. And so I just have one last question. Now that you are free from the EPPP, whew, I just got chills.
Such a good feeling.
Give me something that you're looking forward to, both professionally and personally.
Professionally, I'm just really looking forward to, I mean, this is why I went into the field, to be able to help, to be able to support people and help people in their own journeys. And I feel like through our process, I reignited my passion for working with folks of color as well. So I think that that's one piece that I'm really looking forward to. And also just being able to have a life that doesn't revolve all around homework and studying and just be able to travel more. I actually traveled right after the EPPP and it was the best thing ever. And so just being able to go back to my hobbies, I started playing guitar again, which I really miss.
Oh,
Just being able to go back to myself and the things that I love. Um, and yeah, so I think those two things. And I will maintain as well I had all of these my the phrases that I would tell myself before the tests and all of these things. I keep using them, it really stayed with me. So I think that reminding myself of of my abilities and a lot of just like very positive things that I was telling myself. Those I'm going to keep because I think it made a huge difference. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that too, that that was a big help in constructing, you know, my little steps going into each exam. And now I can use, I mean, it's so silly because we help people with these things, but we can be not always our own best support system. And so I appreciate you helping me get to a place where I'm kinder to myself when things are tough.
You're so welcome. It was such a pleasure. And I wish you nothing but tons of just joy, freedom, and prosperity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And if I also look forward to if there is some way that I can continue to support this group because it takes a village and I want to be able to be part of the village for other people because it really is an intense process.